But this is the best smelling room I think I've ever spoken in. This is great, so congratulations on that. Well, I want to tell you, it's a real pleasure to be here tonight, and I realize, I was told by several people, there's a challenge I have tonight, and that is you just had a great meal, so I stand between you and dessert. And that's not an enviable spot for any speaker to be. But, well, my name is Derrick, and I like money. It sounds like a funny thing to say in church, but it's true. I really like money. But sometimes I think that money gets a bad reputation. Let me give you an example. I used to own a business, and when I would get invited to dinner parties or fundraisers, I would dread when people asked me the question, what do you do for a living? Nowadays, it's easy. I can say I'm a podcast host, an author, and everybody likes me. But back then, I had to face the truth. I was in finance. And that led to a typical script that looks like this. The moment I said I was a financial advisor, people slyly stepped back as if to say, that guy's going to try to sell me something, and I need to be ready to bolt. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. But people assumed I wasn't real. I was greedy, had 2 boats and a sports car parked out front. But I hated that script. And I'm guessing that some of you may have seen that same script in your own life. That moment when you may say to someone, well, I'm in real estate, or I'm in sales, or I'm in insurance, or I lead a nonprofit. And what often happens is, the assumption is that money equals evil. But I don't think it has to be that way. And I don't believe that money is bad. And I don't think that Jesus believes that money is bad either. You probably heard that Jesus references money and possessions countless times in the Bible. But he doesn't say that money is bad. What does he say? The love of money is bad. There probably should have been some phrases in there about barbecue, but I guess that didn't make it in the KJV. But money is not bad, and I want more good people to have more good money to do good things with it. That's what we call the good money framework. Now tonight, what I want to do is I want to lay as our foundational chunk of text Psalm 18, one of my favorite passages. It says, I love you, Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my deliverer. My God is my rock, in whom I take refuge. My shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call to the Lord who is worthy of praise, and I have been saved from my enemies. Now notice this. Money is not your fortress. There's nothing in here about money being your foundation. Your foundation is not your bank account, not your car, not your house, not your smoker. That was kind of personal there, I just realized. But your foundation is the Lord. As we go through this talk, remember that money is not our fortress and not our deliverer. So tonight I want to do a couple things. First of all, I want to start by talking about how generosity can help you as a person. Second, I'll share my framework on how to make more money, invest, and give money, which is a big, important part to me. Then we'll talk about what I call the people portfolio, one of my favorite parts of this talk. And lastly, we'll talk about what to do next. So why generosity? Excuse me. I want to tell you a true story about 2 lottery winners. Denise won in the lottery $2 million. Now you might think to yourself, what could I do with $2 million? I've worked with many lottery winners, good and bad, and I want to compare these 2 stories to you. When Denise came in the office, she was referred to me by her attorney, and we talked about her goals, what was important to her. And she said, Derrick, I really want to use this money for my retirement. I want to live very low-key. I want to make sure I don't run out of money and use this very wisely. She wanted to do some trips with her kids, her grandkids, and that's what she said her primary goals were. So we put a plan together. She was comfortable with it. But I said, Denise, I need to make you aware of something that's going to happen to you, almost certainly. You're going to have family and, quote, friends that will come out of the woodwork asking you for money. It's going to happen fast. You're going to have to learn how to say no with a smile. And so we role-played how to say no. and we talked about making me the bad guy. I've been a bad guy on many occasions. This is just one more way to do it. And I said, you need to let them know, my financial advisor said all of this is tucked away for my retirement. I can only use a very little bit of it to give out to people, so the answer is no, I'm really sorry. And use that and you're safe. So she left confident. She felt like she could handle the situation. So a few weeks go by, I begin to see some deductions from the account. $1,000 here, $2,000. Then I begin to see $5,000, $10,000, $50,000, $150,000. In just 3 months, she had spent $500,000. $500,000. So I quickly called her in. Hey, Denise, this isn't the plan that you and I laid out together. Let's talk through what's happening here. She said, Derrick, I just can't say no to my friends and family. She'd gone, booked big vacations, bought a bigger house, was buying things for her kids. And I said, look, here's the deal. You said running out of money was important to you and not to have that happen. You're paying me to protect and defend your money. And now's the time to do that. If you don't say no, you're going to run out of money quicker than you think. So she, again, left confident, felt like she was back on track again. What happened next was something I've never experienced in 25 years as a financial advisor. In the next 2 years, she spent all $2 million. All of it. And one of the biggest things was, as people would call up her son and say, I want to invest, I need money from your mom to do this, she would pick losing bet after losing bet because her family was involved with it. So here was a woman that had no cause she was passionate about, wanted to take care of her family, but did exactly what she said she wanted to do. Now, about this same time, Charlotte actually won about $3 million. Now, Charlotte came in the office, referred again by her advisor, and we talked about her goals, and she said, Derrick, I want to have a low-key lifestyle. I want to make sure I don't run out of money. I want to make sure that I can provide money for my kids and grandkids, do some traveling, but my passion is I have an organization where I provide Christmas gifts for needy children in my town, and I want to really make that big. And I said, okay, here's a plan to do that. She bought into it, and I said, let me have the conversation with you. People will come out of the woodwork. You need to practice saying no. We did that. She was ready to go. In Charlotte's case, she was able to stay focused on what was important to her. That passion drove her. And one of the philosophies that I have as an advisor is I'd rather you complain about not making money than where did the money go. If you can understand that concept there. And it's very important when you make money, much like if you've ever gone on a diet before, it's no fun losing all the weight only to gain it back again. It's so frustrating. So what I told her was, as some of your investments go up, let's carve out some of those gains and lock that in, move that to your cash account. That way, if the market drops, you've always got the gains locked in. You pay some taxes on it, but you've locked it in. She was able to buy even more gifts for more needy kids. And so 5 years later, she even had more than $3 million left. And so the contrast there is this. Two ladies, but two vastly different stories. One woman wanted to be all things to all people and ended up with nothing. Another woman was true to herself and generous to the causes she believed in, while at the same time, her savings grew further. Similar opportunities, opposite outcomes. The message of these two stories is not only to be careful with your money, but also that money won't change you. It only makes you more of who you already are. Money won't change you. It only makes you more of who you already are. Now, you might think that money can influence happiness, and in some respects, it actually can. I want to tell you about an experiment that Dr. Mike Norton did, who's a Harvard Business School professor. I interviewed him on our podcast, and he took his team to the University of British Columbia, and they did an experiment. They approached students on campus and said, by 5 o'clock today, we want you to take the money in this envelope and spend it on yourself. And in the envelope was either a $5 bill or a $20 bill. Okay? The next group of students, they said, by 5 o'clock today, we want you to spend this money on someone else. There was either a 5 or a 20 in those envelopes as well. So they then bought items. They might have taken somebody to lunch, bought the niece a teddy bear, bought themselves lunch, and so forth. So the next day, they meet with the students, and they test, based on their baseline happiness level the day before, what was the difference. For the people who had the money that spent it on themselves, there was no difference in their happiness level at all. In those students who spent the money on other people, there was a dramatically increased amount of happiness that they experienced. And so the bottom line was that even though sometimes we get excited about the new computer, the new truck, the new phone, typically those are more temporary, euphoric type moments, but they don't provide lasting meaning to our lives. And the other lesson I took away was sometimes it's just a simple $5 or $20 that can make a big difference in people's lives. So remember, it's how you spend your money, not the size of the pile. Or look at it this way. You might assume that you're happier 10 years from 10 years ago, and you're making more money from 10 years ago. But I would ask you a question. Are you truly happy because you're making more money, or is it because your life possibly is better now 10 years later? You've got a girlfriend, you're married, you've got kids, you've got a house, your job is more stable, your life is better. So is it necessarily money that's actually making that difference? Excuse me. Now, I know tonight there's a lot of people who are concerned about the size of their pile. In a room this size, some of you in this room are totally financially independent. Some of you don't have to worry about money for the rest of your lives. Others of you may feel like you've got $67 in your savings and checking and retirement accounts combined, and you might have just bounced your last check. That wasn't meant to be personal, but and everywhere in between. And so what I would tell you is this: you want to start where you're at today, whether that's financially, physically, spiritually. The bottom line is a lot of people waste so much breath on competing with other people. I want to be like that. I'm behind. I need to be there. We are all right here, right now. The bottom line is, what is your next move going to be so that you can then begin doing the good that you want? And so I want to encourage you to not fall in that game of comparison. As someone once said, comparison is the thief of joy, which is so true. Now, this is a great verse. 1 Timothy 6, 9 through 10 says, "Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction." Here's the key verse. "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." So many people are scared of making money because of that verse. And what I would argue, that misinterpretation of that verse. The verse says, "For the love is a root of all kinds." Here's the reason I like money. It's because of all the good that I can do with it, and all the good that you can do with it as well. And one of the first ways to do that is here at the local church. And that's by tithing and supporting what's happening here. You know, 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, "Each of you should give what you decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver." You know, tithing is what the Bible instructs us to do. Now, I understand in churches, and this is real survey information, in many cases in most churches, half of the people at a church don't tithe. And I have to believe there's a struggle there that says, I simply can't part with 10%, because how would we make ends meet? And I get that. What I would say to you is this: if you think about God is over all, He's the creator of all. He is the King of kings and Lord of lords. He is in charge of all. We are simply stewards of what God has given us. Do you feel like there's a higher chance of possible success in what you may pursue if you're obedient or disobedient. To me, it's a simple question, but I leave it for you to think about. Now, am I telling you that if you tithe 10%, all your problems will go away? No. Am I saying there'll never be another weed in your yard? No. Am I saying that your kids will come back and everything's restored and your marriage is perfect? No. All I'm saying is this. As a man, I would rather go into battle knowing that I'm following the battle plan that has been given to me, that's proven time and time again, that have to make it up on the fly on my own. So what I would submit to you is, don't pray about, should I tithe? God commands us to tithe. Pray about above that. Good news, there's a memo that just was released that we can now give more than the tithe. The media hasn't picked up on this, but it will very, very soon. This is breaking news. Now, I tell you that when my wife and I were first married, and keep in mind, this is coming from a guy that enjoys giving, okay, so thus the talk. We were in a Master Your Money class, and the leaders of that class talked about how they tithe their 10%, but then every year they would talk together about increasing that to 10.1, 10.2, 10.5, 11. And it gave them some fun to then direct money to specific parts of the church or other causes they believe in. And one of the things, and this is not the KJV, the King James Version, this is the DKV, this is Derrick version. I believe the 10% tithe should go to the local church. You can argue with me about it, but I just feel like where you get ministered to and where you're at is where that should go, because of all the additional ministry that can be done right here. It's so, so powerful. And from a business standpoint, now you got to hang with me on this. Business owners in the room, think about this. God is saying, you give me 10 and you keep 90. Who does that in business? Typically, it's a 50-50 split. I mean, God's given us a great deal here in obedience, saying, give me 10 and you keep 90. That's a powerful, powerful concept. It's just amazing to me. Now, some of you may be thinking, Derrick, one of the concerns I've got is I just don't make a lot of money right now. I think it's better if I wait until I have a better salary, I've got a better job, I've got more money to be able to give. And I get that. I think that's a reasonable argument. And typically in economics, in the general economy, money given today, for example, the present value of money now, typically always has a higher future value. We would generally accept that. But in God's economy, He flips the script on us. And here's how it works. What happens is even a smaller amount given today is worth more today than it is in the future. Now, how can that be? It's because of the impact factor. You see, you could say, Derrick, I've got $100 right now, but if I wait 10 years, it'll be $1,000. Think about more impact I can do then. Well, that's great, but you've missed all the impact of lives during that 10-year period. But if you give the $10 now, think about, even if it's a small amount, think about the impact you can have on people for the next 10 years. So the bottom line is this. Please don't overthink this and think that what I have now is not enough. God is simply asking for obedience, and I believe in my own life I can testify to this, and countless people in this room, that you will see the way that God uses that. So, the eternal economy is a powerful thing. So what I want to share with you now, I want to shift gears a bit and tell you this. If you're not making the money that you feel you deserve, and you're not making the impact that you feel you want in the world, I believe there's a better way. And what I want to share with you now is a 7-step framework. I call it the Good Money Framework. That is a way to do both things. And the first step is creating what's called your generosity purpose. So much of planning financially starts off with, when do I want to retire? What debt do I want to pay off? When do my kids go to school? When do I want to have that vacation planned for? Which is good. The problem is there's not a true motivation that's there to drive you when things get hard. So the generosity purpose is, think about, it may be right now, it may be when you were younger, a cause that you said to yourself, that's just not right. What is happening there is wrong, and that should be corrected. If it's a cause that you feel like, I want to do something to help bring a solution to that problem. If there's an injustice you see in the world, it could be it could be clean water, it could be child slavery, it could be whatever the issue is for you, what is it that you are passionate about? It might be ministry here at the church, it might be missions, whatever that is, it's a very personal question for you. That generosity purpose, you can literally use that to drive you, especially if you're in business or you can affect your income, to make more money, to do more good. It's a very, very powerful concept. Step number 2, determine your top 3 financial goals. Here's what we know. Complicated plans gather dust. Simple plans create action. I just want you to write down your top 3 financial goals. When Jim came in the office about a year or so ago, this was before I sold my practice, he wanted to retire, he wanted to have 2 vacations a year with his wife, and he wanted to go 4 times a year around the country to see his grandkids. And see his kids too, but the kids were the bonus. The focus was really the grandkids, as you can relate to that. It was a simple strategy. I said, write that down on a sticky note and put it on your mirror. So when you get ready every morning, you see your goals. I said, write that down on a note card and put that beside your bed. Put that on the dash of your car, on your desk at the office. And what happens is, by focusing like a laser on 3 simple things, sometimes the smaller goals that you've got begin to get taken care of as you're reaching those bigger goals, okay? So very simple approach there. Now, step number 3 is to determine your desired income. Now, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound very basic. And I'm not trying to oversimplify it here, but as I talk to people, I find many people complain about, I wish I was making more money. I want to make more money. So-and-so is making more money. And what I realize is most people simply don't know how much money do they truly want to make. What is their goal? And what I would tell you is this, again, writing down, here is my goal. This is my number, 75,000, 100,000, whatever that number is for you. Then the question shifts from no longer complaining about why I'm not earning that to now the strategy becomes, how can I earn that? So what I want to do now, go to step number 5. Actually, step number 4 is review some options on creating more money. So I want to talk about this. This is a really cool lever that you have available to you. So some of you in the room may be in a very defined pay range. If you're a teacher, if you're a cop, you're a pilot, where your job is not defined, you may do extraordinary work, but it's all based on seniority. So there's a very low likelihood you can walk into your boss and say, hey, I'd like to get a raise if I add more value to you. So in that case, what I would submit, and this came to me from a teacher about 5 years ago, her name was April, and she taught science in junior high, but she had a way of bringing complex science topics in a way where the kids could understand. And I said, what if you did this? What if you wrote out your strategy or your system of how you get the kids to grasp those scientific concepts? Because you think it's just normal and you think everybody else does it. But if you ask yourself, do other teachers typically ask you your tips on how to be a better teacher? She said, yes, all the time. That's confirmation. And so write that out. We began to help her market that, not only to other teachers around the country, she began to speak a little bit, but it gave her the ability to move the needle in an area that she was good at, where she couldn't get an income increase at her job, but she could do a side gig to increase that income. Does that make sense? So what I would ask each of you is very, very good at something, but you may be telling yourself, what use is it to other people? Would other people pay for this service or this benefit? I would just question you and ask you to give that some very serious thought and prayer. Now, for those of you that work in a company, I want to share with you just a couple strategies here. All of you have probably heard of, there's a big labor shortage right now. There's a variety of reasons why that's happening. Some call it the Great Resignation. People are leaving jobs to go to get higher paying jobs. So right now is an ideal time to implement this strategy. But what often people do is they walk into their boss and say, hey, I want to make more money or I'm leaving. Well, that's a very short-term strategy, okay? That really doesn't add value to the relationship. And so the word value is the key here. And I want to give you a two-pronged approach, and that is thinking about either having a conversation with your boss and saying, look, I really love working here, but I want to make more money, but to do that, I know I need to add more value to this company and to you. What can I do over the next 3 to 6 months to make that happen? And when I do that, we agree upon a raise that I'm comfortable with. Well, what have you done there? Let's take a step back. You've had the conversation. You've said, I want to make more money, but you've come at it with, how can I add more value? If you're a business owner in the room, you would love a conversation with your employee that says, I want to give you more capacity. I want to help you grow. I want to help you increase your business. That's gold right there. Now, the third item, and I'm going to share a story about Dave in a few minutes, but I'm going to give you a little teaser here. The generosity purpose is powerful in business. I want to give you a real estate example. Let's say that you are going to buy a home and you are going to interview 3 different realtors. All of them equal competence, equal negotiating ability, equal personality. Either one of them would be great. But one of them said to you, John, because of my commitment to the local community, I give a small portion of the commission that I get paid to a cause that you get to pick in our community, because I want to give back and make this community better. Now, all things being equal negotiation skills, equal personality, all those pieces, who would you likely pick? I think the answer is obvious. Yeah. And so that's what I'm proposing to you tonight. We live in a world right now that is heavily commoditized. Very few things can be differentiated. Whether you're in finance, whether you're in any business, sales, real estate, and I believe right now the differentiator is the doing good piece of that. And so businesses that adopt that strategy, it's very, very powerful. And what we know, even millennials, Generation Z, even baby boomers, research shows they will actually pay more money for a product over a competitor if they know that business is helping make the world better. You think about Bombas socks. Bombas socks identify that the homeless have major feet issues. They then, with every sock purchase you make, donate a pair to homeless organizations. We, of course, know about the different shoes and so forth that do that as well. The bottom line is, we often think that generosity is just here in the church, but business owners can use it to really grow what they're doing. Step number 6, implement your generosity purpose. This is where you pick out that organization you care deeply about. Now we want to start giving to that on a regular basis. And last, some of you in the room may be sitting here thinking, Derrick, you like money, I get it, but I've made so many money mistakes, I can't give advice to family or friends. I want to talk to my kids, I want to talk to my grandkids. Let me give you one word that can help overcome that. That is the word curious. Let's be curious together. I don't know the answer to that, but why don't we research that together and find out the answer together? You see, the bottom line is, I feel like, this is my opinion, out of the DKV, that Satan wants to withhold the talents and the wisdom that many of you have, and he wants to put a barrier there so it doesn't pass on to the next generation. As I look around this room, I'm at a distinct advantage over all of you right now. I see the brilliance in this room right here. I see the life experience. I know many of you personally. I see the investment you make in your families and your kids. And I just want to encourage you. Part of this, and I'm going to talk in a moment about the people portfolio, is how do we use that as investment? All right. I mentioned Dave earlier. You know those relationships you have where the person's body language, you can just tell that something's wrong with them without even saying anything? So Dave came in my office. He was a longtime client, and he looked tired. And after we had some small talk, I said, Dave, look, this is obvious, but what's wrong? He said, Derrick, I'm just not motivated at all right now for my company. He owned a small business here in town. His kids worked in it, but he was only working about 2 days a week. He said, Derrick, I feel like I'm mailing it in. I'm not motivated. I'm not excited. There's no passion. I've lost that. And for some reason, I was surprised these words came out of my mouth, and he was equally surprised as I said them. I said, Dave, is there a cause that you care deeply about? The question caught him off guard. He said, Derrick, it's funny you asked that because about 5 years ago, my family and I, when we were traveling, went to a village, and the tour guide told us that in this particular village, there was a real lack of education. They needed a schoolhouse built to help these kids stop from falling behind. They just weren't doing well academically at all. And he said, Derrick, I and my wife and I always wanted to do something to help solve that problem, to build that schoolhouse. I said, Dave, what if you did this? What if over the next year, you made a goal to increase sales by 20%, and you took half of that and you funded that school? He took a breath, he took it in, he said, that's great. It was watching a new man come back to life again. So we have quarterly visits back when I had my practice. He comes in 3 months later. He looks younger. He looks more energetic. This guy's on fire. And I said, Dave, tell me what's happening. He said, Derrick, at first I was skeptical, but after we talked about it, I reached out to that school, found out the dollar amount. You're not going to believe this, Derrick, but we've already funded half of that school. We're already pacing up over 20% for the year. Now, what that did was, it created a moment where money and meaning intersected, where cash and a cause came together, where profits and a purpose intersected. And that's the beauty of this model, is what I'm telling you is, go make money, but not just to build it up in the bank account and stockpile it, but to do good. Because I believe it's one of our most powerful levers that all of us have that we can dramatically make an impact in. Now, the last piece of this is the people portfolio. Now, I love investing. I love seeing my clients make money. But of all the things that I've done, perhaps what has brought me the most joy is my people portfolio. And what that is that's when you pick out a handful of people that you are going to invest in. They may be younger than you, older than you, it doesn't matter, but you just see the potential that they have, and they need someone like you to help them along the way. It might be a family member that just needs that one semester paid at community college to instill belief in them so that they can go on to pursue their degree. It might be, as a gentleman I had breakfast with just this week told me the story. He's now 55. This happened when he was about 15. So 40 years ago, he tells me the story. He said, Derrick, we were at this church, and we loved playing worship songs. We built a worship band together, and a new person came into the band, and he recognized the talent that we had. And he said, you guys need to record an album. You need to share this ministry with youth camps and really do some big work with this. Well, they all skeptically said, look, that sounds great, but we have no money. We're basically high school students. And what happened was they were introduced to two men at their church who proceeded to pay for them to set up the recording gig. One of them had an old van they were going to sell. They then gave it to them to haul their recording equipment in. And the gentleman said to me, Derrick, it's like these two guys had a money ministry. And I was like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. See, so many people think that ministry is only about, I'm up in the pulpit, I'm doing mission work. All of that is what people think ministry is isolated to. But no, there are some of you in this room right now that either have a gift of making money that you can choose to plow back into people to help further their goals and dreams and ministries here, or you just have a heart for ministry. See, here's a guy, 55 years old, who's reflecting back 40 years ago on two guys that changed his life. And what I will tell you is, I think all of you in this room have that same opportunity. Who do you want 25 years from now to be talking about, yeah, Jim did this, Tom did this, Ed did this, and there's a story that has your name attached because you helped extract the potential out of that person. You know, one of the, had a phone call with a friend yesterday. He said, Derrick, have I told you about when I gave away my car? And I said, no, but it sounds like a great story. Tell me. So he told me about a person in his church that needed a car to get to and from college, and their car had depreciated. You know, most used cars end up at about $2,000 value. That's kind of like how they work. And so he gave that car to the student, and the student was flabbergasted. How can anybody give me a car? Well, it was a lot more meaningful, as he described to me, of giving it and how it made him feel than having sold it for what would have been $2,000. Now, not everybody can do that. I get that. So then about 3 years later, that student gave that car to somebody else. Now, it had quite a few miles on it. That's where the story ends. But the bottom line is it was passed down a couple different times. Here's what I would ask you to do. Right now in your circle, in your community, and I'll tell you, for me, I have a passion for investing in the lives of young people. Every year, God brings about 2 people into my life that typically aren't the traditional student. They tend to march to a different drum beat, and I connect with them really, really well. And so I will send them a text once a week. I'll take them to coffee periodically. But the goal is to instill belief. And again, I want to encourage all of you. All of you have that potential to be belief instillers and potential extractors of the people around you. You'll be surprised at the result of that. All right. So 1 Timothy 6:17-19, as we close, says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, not to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides everything for our enjoyment. And this is the gold right here. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation, back to that word, for the coming age, so they can take hold of the life that is truly life. And my desire for all of you tonight is to take hold of the life that is truly life. And what I have found is one of the best ways to do that is by giving. I believe it starts tithing here at the local church. And then the sky is the limit after that. And for those of you that really enjoy that, the anonymous giving piece, you need to practice your poker face. Oftentimes, if you give an anonymous gift to somebody, God has a sense of humor. He'll often have that person come back and thank you. You've got to act like you have no idea what they're talking about. So practice that ahead of time. But the bottom line is we have a great opportunity right now to do those things. So the call to action is this. Pray about where God wants your money to go. Now, some of you may be thinking, Derrick, I only have $63. Still pray. I'll finish by saying this. I heard a study once about aging. When you hit a certain age, it might be when you're 60, might be later in retirement, people go in one of 2 directions. Some people turn inward and become more selfish. They put in their time, and now it's their time. Their whole life becomes an exercise in avoiding inconvenience. For example, no slam on him, but when my dad retired, I offered to fly he and my mom down to see their grandkids, and us too, a couple times a year. My dad complained it was a lot of work to pack and drive to the airport and fly, and he never took us up on that because it was too inconvenient. I understand. But other people do the opposite. Instead of turning inward and becoming selfish, they are men that you see mentoring people at Grounds and Gold. The guys you see helping with construction projects and electrical projects when they're needed. The guys you see making great barbecue for their fellow men. Amen. Men. Amen. That's right. their lives become an exercise in how to give more of themselves and their money. Regardless of your age, it's never too late to change. Turn inward, turn outward. I think you know what I would have you do. But my challenge is to do it now. Now is your time to give. I believe now is your time to find ways to make more money so that you can do even more. But think about that people portfolio. Right now, people need you, and they need you more than ever. Thank you very much, and now on to dessert. All right, appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
So we've got dessert, we've got cobbler lined up for all of y'all, and then afterwards, here around 8 o'clock, we're going to do a question and answer with Derrick. He's going to come back up. I'm going to join him on stage. You can text my phone number if you have any questions, and the best ones will get presented in the question and answer. So, dessert. Man! Man! I didn't realize that we were at a library. I didn't realize that the Arlington Public Library was open at 8 o'clock on a Saturday. We can try that again! Man! That is fantastic. That is the response I was looking for. Thank you to answer the call to manlyhood. So, I want to thank you for texting my phone. My phone is blowing up. It's the first time in a long time my phone has blown up. So you can text that number, and let's get this question and answer started. Hey, let's give it up one more time for Derrick. First question. Are you ready?
Super hard.
No fastballs.
Okay.
No fastballs. I promise you no fastballs. We're going to stand by that. So, Derrick, what would be the most important skill or lesson you could teach the next generation?
All right, so next generation, well, let me go back one step, and that is, I touched on it in the talk, but I think so many people hold themselves back thinking that maybe they made some big money mistakes. What could I teach the next generation? So I think the first thing is to lose that limiting belief and even consider sharing with your kids or your grandkids in an appropriate way. You know what, here's a mistake I made and what I learned from it. Because if I go home and my kids ask, hey, Dad, how was your day? And I say, oh, it was a great day, they blow me up. But if I say, you know what, Dad really made a mistake today, they're all ears. You get that? And so take advantage of your mistakes, because that can be a really good learning tool. It also humanizes you. I find it to my kids. So what I would teach them would be, I think the value of the dollar. I interviewed a guy named Bill Perkins on my podcast about 6 months ago, and he talked about when money made sense for him, he began to think, if I buy this shirt that costs $15, how long will I have to work to have paid for that shirt? That would have cost, back in the day, probably like 2 hours of work to buy that shirt. And so it taught him, I don't want to buy that shirt. That's not a good use of my time or my money. So I would encourage people I would set them up, again, I'm a big advocate of tithing right off the top, but if they can begin saving right off the top, Jordan, I think that's really the key. Whether it's in a 401k or a Roth 401k, just socking money aside, and if they can learn, let's say that they're making, whatever their salary is, if they can learn to live on maybe 70% of that from the beginning, and that's all they knew, think about how much better they would have of a cushion financially. That's what I would teach them.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. With how things are going right now, how do we survive the next 10, 20 years?
Okay. Well, I would encourage you to stay in the U.S. I know there's a lot of people buying tickets to leave the country. The answer is prayer. You know, if you have, I don't know, many of you have kids in the room. I don't have grandkids. But as my kids have gone off to college, I realize how little control I have. And then I realize how little control I really ever had. Really? And, but what I can control is how much I pray. I've never prayed more than when my kids have been in college and away because they're simply out of my reach. I think right now, this is my opinion, it's so easy to get really sort of sucked into the news cycle. I meet people all the time that their moods are really based on what the news of the day is. And it can be easy to fall into that cycle. I don't fault people for that, but I just think we're nonstop 24/7 in your face, and it's very polarizing. I just think right now we need to pray more than ever, but also I think we need to be savvy investors. You know, the government will offer bailout funds for different things, but nobody's going to bail you out of a bad retirement plan. There's just no retirement plan loans that I have come across. So I think it's really up to you that whatever your situation is, to really take a hard look and say, what can I do today to really begin taking advantage of those opportunities?
Question here. What are some fun ways to give?
Yeah, so fun ways to give. I mean, there's lots of fun ways to give. I would just look around. You know, when you begin to ask God for wisdom and just say, hey, God, show me where some needs are, putting up your spiritual antennas, as I like to call it, you'll begin to see needs. And don't underestimate even a small need. You know, for example, your words. How much does a word cost? Very little. It just costs your time. But if you look around, I mean, you see a young person, you see someone, just encourage them. You know what? There's a gift I see that you have that you could really benefit a lot of people with. I just thought I would tell you that. That goes a long way coming from someone like the people in this room. But I think obviously, you know, involve your family and your grandkids. Some of our best memories are, you know, one time we bought a football for a family. This guy was a big football fan, so we knocked on the door. It was snowy outside. One of our kids fell in the snow. We had to hustle him off, and literally we parked around the corner, and we laughed until we got all the way home. But it was just knock on the door and take off, and that person never knows today what happened. But also look around the needs that are around you. You know, you've got resources, whether it's, like I said, buying a book for somebody, making a contribution. All of those things can be really fun ways to give.
I really liked your answer there, how we can give both financially and serving of your time. I think those are two very important ways for us to give. Beyond being money to give, we can absolutely give our time and our services. So this is a longer question, so I'm going to hit the high points of it. This audience member says, I feel the Western culture idea of retirement is truly selfish and see it as growing wealth arrogantly with the intentions that you're going to do something and basically inherit all of this money and not give it away to people. I've looked for biblical scriptures that support building wealth and for your own long-term benefit and trying to find some ones that are convincing. Why is growing big sums of money a requirement? Why is growing big sums of money to require a part of Christianity? Let me rephrase that. When your giving principle goes bad and people are stockpiling money and there's a little bit of greed, what causes that and how does retirement fit in all of that?
Yeah. Well, I don't see any verses in the Bible that talk about whether to retire or not. So I'm not here to really debate that. As I talked at the end of my talk, I think there comes a choice to make. There's a path you can choose of being inward-based or outward-based. And you probably meet people like this. You meet somebody who may be 65 years old, but they look and act like they're 85 years old. They've just been beat down in life. And so I think all of us have a choice right now to say, what can we do to change that? But I think when you think about people wanting to save money and have enough for retirement, I just think there's within all of us, there's a hole there for security. We talk about differences between men and women. Obviously, women have a high need for financial security, and they want to have that provided for them in many cases. And I think that that's something that is human in all of us. And so it's natural to want to have more money than we may need. The challenge there is, there's often a strategy of spending it down that when you die, your last check to pay for your funeral bounces. Now, that was a theory that was bantered around many years ago. But I will tell you this, and while that may make a lot of sense and say, well, I don't want to leave any money to my kids, let me just have you picture this. How stressed would you be every month if you saw the balance of your account dropping every single month when you know that the money's going to run out at some point? Because the game that I'm playing is, I want everybody in here to live as long as possible. We just want to make sure that you don't die before your money does. I mean, that's the key here. We want to make sure that lasts that long. So I go back to, again, it's all for me about what is that generosity purpose? What is it that's going to drive you? Because ultimately, you see this in the movies, you see it in Braveheart and Gladiator. If I could only do it all over again, I would have spent less time at the office. I would have given more. I mean, we see that in movies all the time. That's like the prevailing script. This is that moment of opportunity for all of us, I believe. I mean, as men right now, I just think we have the ability within our families to lead, and part of that is leading financially. But don't think that you have to be the professor of economics to teach money in your family. Many of you in this room I know have paid off large amounts of debt. That is a witness to so many people. That's powerful that you have lived that lesson yourself. And so I just would ask yourself, what lesson can I teach someone? And even going back earlier, the mentoring piece, even here in the youth group, just ask God to give you wisdom. Hey, could you and your wife take somebody to lunch, or have a college student or a couple over? Every Tuesday night we have what we call family dinner, as Jordan mentioned.
Yes, we do.
And it's just a fun time, open conversation, free food, whoever comes over from 6:30 to 9:30. It's just a great time together. But it's just an investment in them. But it also keeps us younger, and we get to learn all about the newest tech, which we would have no clue if we didn't have younger people come to the house.
And I would say, as someone on the tech-savvy young end side of the conversation, my generation especially, we're attracted to that. We want to learn. A lot of people in the young adults group, they come from broken homes. They come from families who maybe dad's not in the picture, or mom and dad split when they were in grade school or something like that. And we desire to replicate good families. I think a big part of our church are amazing families. We have a lot of amazing families here at Lake Church. And our goal for young adults is to replicate that in our own lives. We have a lot of young families coming up, a lot of young marrieds who are learning the ropes. And one of the great things that I've learned to bridge the generational gap is to have those young folks over at homes, so that they get that experience, that they get that learning and experience that they're craving. We're craving to learn information. We're craving to see how y'all did things. Maybe we'll put our own spin on it. Maybe we'll mess it up. Maybe we'll run it into the ground like millennials might do occasionally. But we desire that. And so, Derrick, it's been one of my favorite things, is to learn underneath you, underneath your wife, your family. And I've learned so much just from family dinner on Tuesday nights. So if there's an opportunity for us as Lake Church to replicate that in a discipleship model, just like we learned from the Shift Conference, from all of that, let's find a way to do that, because that would be awesome. Now, men, we are here. Who wants a t-shirt? Yeah, sure.
Big one. I want a big one.
Last three. Who really wants one? Who really wants one? Hey, all right. No, I cannot pitch for the Rangers. Every ball that I would throw would go the other way past my head at a really high rate of speed. I don't like that. So, as we reach the end of our time, I want to thank Derrick. Derrick, thank you.